G'day ladies and gentlemen, my name is Condra and welcome back to this week's video. I know that it is late, I'm well aware of that, but this one took me a lot longer than I thought it would, and I'm super excited to finally bring you the painting tutorial for the Invictor Tactical Warsuit. This has been roughly about a week in the making, and from the day that you see this video, if I get everything done on time, will be the day after I finished painting this and recording this voiceover. So, all going well, it'll be posted by Thursday, the 29th of February. So, I will keep my fingers crossed, but I'm so excited to bring this one to you. Without further ado, we're just going to jump straight into it, and I'll show you how I painted this bad boy up. So, I'm taking a slightly different approach with painting these guys. I ended up chucking them on these little clippy things that you usually use for Gundam, and just using our normal servicer, I'm just going to go over and prime all of the pieces black. Now, I don't usually use these things, and I completely forgot that I had them. But I figured this time would be a perfect opportunity to undercoat all these panels, because it'd save me like pinning everything and having to futz around with that, and just make it a little bit easier overall. And I will admit that it made everything so much easier, and I didn't have to worry about all the mess and fuss of pinning and gluing things or putting blue tack everywhere. For the main body, I just grabbed a can of gloss black spray paint and just undercoated everything. So it's just going to give us a really nice shiny base coat for all of the metallics and just make them shine. Now, I'm just using some Vallejo Metal Color Silver. This is super bright and I absolutely love it for all my metallics. And I'm just going to quickly sort of zenithal this over the entire model that I want to be metallic. Now, this is super easy to do. I didn't even have to thin my paint whatsoever. You can just drop this straight into the airbrush and just go over everything. I did make sure to try and keep the majority of the recesses black, just so that it can give us a nice little bit of depth, because I don't want to have to come back later and taint all this down with black wash or something that's going to dull the vibrancy of it. Now, as you can see, this is what the bad boy looked like when he was fully metallicized. Now, for all the blues, since this is a Space Wolf, I'm actually going to be starting with a McCrag blue, which I am not actually watching a tutorial for this. I'm just kind of going off the top of my head on how I think I would paint a Space Wolf. So I figured I'd start with a nice dark blue to give us a solid base to build up to those brighter and brighter highlights. Now, just going over the airbrush, I carefully went over these panels, and I initially did the first layer with the airbrush, but sort of got a little bit haphazard with it, and ended up just doing the next two coats with a brush. Now, just using some rust grey, I want to show you guys that you can get super smooth blends without an airbrush. So for these guys, I mostly highlighted all the areas that were facing up, or areas that would be in highlight. And as you can see, it comes up really quickly. And even though this looks a little bit rough, we can come back later and clean it all up. Now, we did have so much fun painting up the armor of this. If you look at the model and you just see where the shadows are forming from where your light is, you can easily pick out where they should be and manually highlight them up. So on this panel right here, since this corner obviously looks a little bit lighter in my light, I went over with a rust grey and gently just glazed it on there. I'm sort of going between like a kind of glaze and a layer, just enough to make it nice and smooth and allow me a bit of room later to tone it down. Now for our next layer, we're just going to use some Fenrisian grey and do the extreme highlights. Now I'm pretty sure I covered roughly maybe about 20% of our previous areas and really stuck it towards the areas that were going to be on the top, like so. It's super easy to do. As you can see here, we're just gently and very slowly highlighting up, creating that nice smooth gradient. Very easy to do. Now, as you can see, he's looking absolutely incredible. And so is the Invictor Warsuit. Now, I ended up grabbing some Fenrisian grey as well, and what we're going to do is we're just going to come back and pick out some of the highlights on the panels. It's going to break it up a little bit more nicely than just having the gradients on there, and just provide a little bit more interest in the model in general. Now, I'm just going to use some Black Legion contrast, more or less to block out the areas that we're going to be doing with metallics next, and just any other areas that are black. Mostly things like his undersuit and just a couple of the joins in the suit there. You don't want to worry about the back of this model. It's going to be in the Invictor Warsuit, so there is absolutely no point putting black on it or painting the back of the model, because we just won't see it. It's just wasted time. Quickly throw a coat on his little Tabbard thing there, and using some super glue, we're just going to quickly assemble the model. And like always, Just want to make sure we scrape that down so we're not gluing paint on paint to ensure that is a super strong connection. Now I did actually add a little bit of plastic glue in amongst the middle of this, and then a bit of super glue on the outside so the plastic glue can weld it, but the super glue is going to give us that instant bond. Now using some German black grey and some burnt umber, I went around and started picking out all of the leathery type things. For both of these guys, I just did a bit of a wet blend between the two colors. It's super simple to do. You just start with your first color, then you come in with your highlight color, and then you slowly blend them up with a brush that has no paint on it. I did also take the time to start base coating all of the bones and things that are going to be sort of a bony color. And then using some Mornfang brown, I went around and did the final highlights on all of the leathery parts. Now, this is super easy to do, and leather often intimidated me when I first started. But all you have to do is make it look really scratchy and weathered by just kind of stippling it onto the highlights and making it look really rugged. Now for all the metallics, it's nothing special. We just want to come in with our lead belcher and just highlight any of the areas that are going to be facing towards the light source. Pretty easy to do, and instead of shading it all down, I just made sure to avoid the recesses, but if you would like, you can just base coat everything and then shade that down. Now for the whites, I just grabbed this white from Vallejo and quickly highlighted everything up. Super dirty and nasty. I don't want to spend too much time on this. It's not particularly a focal point of the model, and we're just going to be glowing him in here anyway. He's going to be slightly obscured. So, like with the body, what we did before, I grabbed some Tamiya thin cement, which is actually sprue glue. I've got a bunch of sprues in there to make sure that we get a nice strong bond, and kind of just threw our pilot in there. As you can see, he fits in perfectly, and for some reason it's always so satisfying to throw those guys in the cockpits. Now for his little tabard thingy, I'm going to grab a corn red, Mephiston red, and Evil Sun Scarlet, and slowly build up some red highlights on the tabard. So starting with our corn red, I just went over the model and avoiding all of the recesses, just keeping that black in there. I slowly went over the main areas. Now I was really careful with this, and I also did the gems at the same time, which are pretty easy, more or less just painting opposite corners, and then as you go up on your highlights, keeping them only towards the edges. Now, I did end up coming back with a second coat of corn red because I watered this down a little bit too much, but it wasn't too bad. This means that we're going to get a much nicer and smoother result. Moving up to our next highlight color, as you can see in the background, I did sort of mix them together to create kind of a mid color between the two, and then gently layered that over everything, slowly building it up over a couple of layers. Now, grabbing our combination of brown paints, I just want to come in and start doing all the fur details. Again, we're just going to be wet blending these, which sounds super complicated, but it is one of the easiest things you can do. All you need to do is start with your main color. I'm going from darkest to lightest, and then gently start wet blending it right into there. And as you can see, I usually start from the outer area and then work my way in so that there's not that much paint, and we can really work on that blend. And finally, just coming in with that Mornfang brown and gently stippling it on, making sure to blend it in. Now, this is my clean brush, and as you can see, it's super easy to blend these, and you get such a smooth gradient. Now, to help it stay nice and smooth and sort of blend together, I grabbed some contrast Guilliman flesh and went over the entire thing. This will make the transition much smoother and kind of tie it in so it looks more like a cohesive piece. So for all the bone pieces, I just grabbed some Mornfang brown and went over everything, trying to avoid the majority of the recesses and little nooks and crannies. And mixing a little bit of pale sand in there, I just started highlighting these guys up. I absolutely love painting bone, and I think it's one of the easiest things you can do and really make shine on the model. And with our mix, I gently and gradually add a little bit more pale sand until we got to our final highlight color. You can also use a color like Ushabti Bone to do the same thing, but I had that one on hand. Now, copper's super easy. All you need to do is just grab a transparent ink or contrast paint that's kind of orangey and just slap it over our metallics. And just like that, you've got an instant copper. No need to worry about shading and all that jazz, just chuck it straight on. Now, for all the gold details, I came around with some Retributor armor and started picking out all the panels. And just like with all the rest of our metallics, I made sure to avoid any of the recesses. I contemplated doing non-metallic metal on this, but due to the time constraints, I kind of just had to slap some gold on to break it up. And for the most part, I definitely could have shaded it, but I'm pretty happy with how this all looks. I did also pick out a couple of details, as you can see before, just in a few different colors, but nothing too crazy. They're up to you and what choice you'd like to paint those ones. Now for his base, I want to create something epic, so we're going to be putting an orc on ice. So I 3D printed this little guy up after chopping him in half in my 3D slicer, throwing a bunch of super glue on him, and I bought a heap of these Cork coasters from, I think it was Spotlight here in Australia, and they were super cheap and just make the perfect rubble / rock basing material. Using a bunch of super glue to make sure that bad boy stays on there, I pressed it down gently, and then just using my clippers, I started carving it away so that it looks like rocks. As you can see, got a little rock pile in the front. Now for all the snow, I wanted to kind of tie the base together. I grabbed a bunch of PVA wood glue and some bicarb soda that I bought from Woolies and just slapped it all on. So just chucking a bunch of glue to start and a little bit there. And using my radius brush just to mix it all around so that we've got good coverage. And dumping a truckload of baking soda over the whole thing. And I just want to make sure you tap off the excess. And after undercoating everything, or priming it, I sprayed a bunch of isopropyl alcohol. And when I did this, I thought I had the ratio right for the PVA glue. It was a little bit too goopy, so it didn't really flow. So I think next time I'll make sure to come through with a more of a wet mix with some PVA so that it actually flows in nicely. But shuffling it around with my paintbrush did the job. Now for the icy water here, I'm not going to go too detailed with this. I'm just going to use some black, some Macragge blue, and some Nihilak oxide. And while these are all wet, we're just going to start wet blending them. Super easy. So starting off with a black just to give us a nice solid base coat. And making sure to sort of avoid our orc where possible, but if you do mess up, you can come in with a wet brush and just clean up any of the black areas that are left over, just like so. Now with the Macragge glue, I'm just stippling it through everything while the black is still wet. This creates kind of a nice little gradient and adds a bit of visual interest to what will soon be our icy part. Finally, coming in with that Nihilak oxide. I did end up leaving this to dry and then coming in with a really watery mix and then doing it again so we could get that nice and vibrant highlight. So I'm not going into too much detail with this orc, but I just grabbed some snakebite leather, some Deathworld forest, and a metallic paint just to pick out all the areas that I needed to. And then I think I threw a orc flesh wash over everything from Vallejo colors. For all the ice, I'm just going to be using UV resin. It cures super quickly under the UV light torch, and you don't have to worry about mixing anything, which I absolutely adore. Now, to get the final cure on it, because I always find that my resin is a little bit sticky after I've done the 3 minutes with the torch, I like to chuck it into my UV cure station for roughly about 10 minutes on 180 fan force. Just want to make sure you really bake it. And once that was all done, it was time to attach the Invictor Warsuit to its base, and then we can start doing some cool effects. Now, I didn't bother pinning this because I'm lazy and I can't be bothered pinning, so I just ended up smacking an absolute metric shitload of glue on there and dabbed him on down. As you can see, our orc is looking nice through the ice there. And just holding it on for a little bit to make sure that we got a nice secure bond. Now, for all the snow effects, I just mixed a bunch of PVA glue and bicarb soda. There isn't an exact science here. I more or less go for kind of a gloopy, almost runny cake mix, or firm cake mix, I guess you could say. I did go a little bit too dry with the mix here, and then made sure to come back with a bit more glue just to water it down. Essentially, the more glue that you add, the more transparent it'll be, and I wanted my snow to be nice and opaque and look really cool. So I ended up just kind of dabbing it around the base using my little crappy brush. And I also put a little bit on the model just to kind of tie it into the scene. Now, this was a bit of a risk, and I know it wouldn't have, maybe not have worked out, but overall, I was pretty happy with how it turned out. And that left us with this absolutely insane conversion and paint job. I just want to say thank you to everyone who enjoyed the last video and those of you who are coming to see this video. I have had an absolute blast painting this up, and I do wish I could have done a couple more techniques and kind of not had to have rushed as much. But overall, I am really happy with how it turned out, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for watching. If you did indeed enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like on it. And if you are new here, don't forget to subscribe. We have an absolutely blossoming community right now, and I'd love to see some friendly new faces around here. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for watching, and until next time, happy hobbying. And until next time, happy hobbying. Bye.